Okay, we're going to roll with this. And if we need to upload it later, we'll do it that way. Welcome to Dental Brain Crops for the third time. I am your host, Chelsea Myers. And today I'm so excited to be joined with Brett Kessler. Brett, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chelsea. Great to be here. Long overdue. I'm really excited.
Yeah, Brett and I've been talking since last year and finally got this podcast scheduled today, and I will properly introduce you in just a second. But what was really cool about that was we started talking. And so, of course, I followed your social, and then all of a sudden, you're like my National Geographic of dental. I'm seeing you on the mountains, and then I'm seeing you in, was it snowshoeing? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I do a lot of snowshoeing and skiing in the winter, and it's just I love snowshoeing because you get to go to places you never get to go to in the winter, due to the snow. So it's great. And I live in the mountains. I live in Denver, which is close to the mountains of Colorado. So it's great.
That is so cool. Yeah, I've never snowshoed before. It looks like one of those things that you would go into it with a lot of aspiration and then realize like 2 to 3 steps in, like this is actually quite the athletic feat to take on.
Yeah, it is harder than just hiking, because snowshoe has a volume, it makes your foot bigger, and every time you sink in, you pull up that volume of snow on your snowshoe. So it is
Yeah.
like doing like leg lifts while you're running, and depending on the snow conditions, but it's quite a workout and brings me a lot of satisfaction.
Yeah, like running with sand buckets on your feet on the beach or something.
Basically, very similar.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Brett, you are a trustee for the ADA. I know that you practice dentistry still, handful of days a month right now, right? Do a lot of
Yeah, my
traveling. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say my trustee commitments bring me around the country, and so this year I'm not working as much as I normally work, but I'm trying to impact the profession in different ways. So
Very good. And then you also serve on the well-being committee for Colorado in dentistry. And I want to touch on that later. So if you would, I had this agenda all drawn up, and then I've just been reflecting on the conversations I've been having with doctors over the last couple of weeks. And I thought, I think that you are the perfect person to give us some inspiration and some hope, as well as some perspective on what it can be like in different areas of life. You're not only a champion in dentistry, that you're an incredible physical athlete. And then I would also say an athlete of the human mind in some ways. And so I'd just love to touch on all of those areas if you're up for it.
I'd love to. Yeah, that pretty much encompasses what I do. That's great. Love to talk about that.
Awesome. Okay. Well, let's just start. Talk to me about your dental career. Did you always know that you wanted to be a dentist?
So that's a funny. I got a funny answer to that question. So
Okay.
I, I went to the University of Iowa and I studied engineering, and with the intent of going into medical school. And when I spent one summer studying for the MCAT, and I remember having the MCAT application in my hand, standing in front of the mailbox, wondering, I don't know if I really want to do this.
Mhm.
And out of nowhere, I just ripped up the application and walked away. And I kind of floundered around for a little while, trying to figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life. And one of my good friends, who was in dental school at the time, he was my roommate. Um, Told me, Brett, you should consider dentistry with your engineering background. You'd probably do really well with dentistry, and that the girls were cute. Basically, that's what he said. And I had met some of his classmates, and they were cute, and I was pretty, I'm like, okay, I could do that. But I really knew nothing about dentistry at the time, and so I shifted everything from MCAT studying to the DAT and a dental admission test. And 2 weeks later, I took the DAT and I scored really, really well. And and I look back and I remember enjoying going to the dentist when I was like 12 years old. I had a crush on my dental hygienist, so I would eat Oreos before I went in so she'd spend more time with me.
Oh
And
my gosh.
that's all I knew about dentistry. But once I took that DAT I was in biomedical engineering, and out of nowhere we started having guest lecturers from the dental school who showed us what dental implants were, and I didn't know what dentures were, but basically he showed us before and after people with really bad teeth, and then people with beautiful smiles and implants, and I became intrigued by that. One of my design projects that I had to partake in was the biomechanics of the force distribution of how dental implants work under various loads and things like that. So it was like, I felt really, really comfortable going in, and I did really well in dental school, and the girls were cute. That's where I met my wife. We started dating. We were classmates. We started dating our first year, and got married our fourth. And so, yeah, that's my story of how I chose dentistry. So it's
How
worked out okay.
interesting. Yeah, it's worked out okay. So the girls were cute. All all came full circle.
That's right.
Very good. Okay, so you say it like that, and it sounds to me like a very beautiful, happy, as much as it can be, low stress, things going right, not low stress. Okay, talk to me about that.
So dental school is hard, and I'll be honest. I was really, really smart, book smart, and going into dental school, but I had no hand skills whatsoever. And so they throw us all these smart people into these art classes, and kind of with the intention to fend for yourself. And I didn't do very well in those first dental type classes, and in fact. Morphology and occlusion, which is we do like wax up of teeth and create shapes of teeth and out of wax, and and we create bites on models and things like that. It was very hard for me, and I failed the class in my first semester, and I end up having to take it that summer. And I lovingly call it, I went to wax camp that summer, and me and a few other people, we huddled around Bunsen burners and sang Kumbaya songs while we learned how to do wax ups and learn how to build our hand skills with, more one-on-one, attention with our instructors. So I became very good at that part. And in fact, I taught morphology and occlusion at University of Colorado for 8 years, I believe. And, and I really had a lot of empathy for those students, because the same thing is happening. They're the smartest of the smart are going into dental school. It's really competitive. And the people that are going, I call them the smartest of the smart, because they also want a good lifestyle. Or they can decide to go to medicine or go to dentistry, and the lifestyle of a dentist, I think, is much, much better than that of a physician. So and I see them struggle, and I was able to empathize with that because I was there too. And and I felt like I touched a lot of dental students in a positive way, and got them going on a great path for their careers. So it's that's the thing about us. We can learn to improve in areas that we're weak in. And I had no idea what I was getting into when I went into dentistry. So and I had to kind of learn everything on the fly. So
Mhm. And I think that's one of the things that I was originally drawn to you about is you have a long track record of making your weaknesses your strengths, and not just doing it, but then using that to enrich the lives of other people. Is that something that's just always been you, who you are? You learn it and now you want to share, or talk to me a little bit about that.
I'm going to just step back a little bit, and is it okay if I be blunt about certain parts of
Yeah,
my life? Okay, great.
sure.
So I entered into dental school with a substance abuse problem, with a drug and alcohol problem, and it was my secret. And I was able to do very well in dental school. And I left dental school with a worse drug and alcohol problem, and I got sober in 1998. And at that point, as I got on my recovery journey, I became really inspired to live my best life. When we're locked up in an addiction with mental illness, our world becomes very, very small and very, very limited. And once I broke free of that with the help of professionals and mentors and guides and books, and I just really had to dive all in, I became inspired to live my best life. And back when I got sober, not many people were talking about recovery, and the only thing people knew about alcoholism and drug addiction was what happened in Hollywood with those, all the shenanigans that were going on, and you read about it in People magazine with celebrities who had problems, and but no one ever talked about the beauty of recovery, and we swept it under the rug as a culture. I feel it was the best thing that ever happened to me. So why not share that? There's millions of people who are struggling in silence. I chose to recover out loud, and in the hopes that other people might find their way through hearing my story, and the story of many of my friends and colleagues that also paved the way for people like me. So I became inspired to live my best life and share, and be a catalyst for positive change in the world. And I learned that is my why. Over the years, that's what I came up with, because I was doing it naturally, and then when I became conscious of it through a lot of self reflection and personal work. Once I realized that was what it was, I became more intentional with trying to make the world a better place.
I love that. And I think that's such a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing. You talked about um, you went into dental school and your addiction was your secret, and you were able to protect that secret for a really long time. And I think that just to provide a little bit of clarity for our listeners here, there is a lot of shame around addiction, and anything that we're doing that is not ultimately aligned with who we want to be or who we believe we should be, but that we're doing. And I think a part of that is um, you protect it so much because it's the thing that allows you to, in some way, shape, or form, contribute in those other areas. So that is the reason that addiction is so protected, because it's how I get the confidence to talk to you, or it's how I have the energy to show up. And there's this tremendous amount of fear around, if you take that away, whether or not we'll be able to contribute at all to those other things that we do want to be a part of and we know are important to us. So I appreciate you bringing light to that shame and that secretiveness.
Exactly. Thank you. And this also, another aspect of it is that we're all such high achievers in the dental profession. It was the first time in my life where I failed at something. And I felt, when I went into rehab, I felt my objective was to learn as much as I could about this problem, and because that's how I got over different challenges in my life up till then. And once I learned about it, then I would just move on.
Right.
And outside of rehab, a few months later, I was right back to where I was, and that was a scary, depressing mindset that I was in. So with high achievers who never fail, this could be really, really bad. And so we keep it a secret because we don't want anyone to see our weaknesses, and we don't want anyone to see our humanness. We don't allow ourselves to be human in that way. And so, the high achievers like to figure things out on their own. They don't like to ask for help. They don't like to show any signs of weakness. They don't show fear. And in dental school, when I say I went in with a drug and alcohol problem, I came out with a worse one. In dental school, they breed perfectionism, with
Mm-hmm.
everything. And like when I was teaching occlusion and morphology, one of our directives from the director of the program was, if God himself and came down and did this lab work on this tooth, on a good day, you give him a 9 out of 10. And I was like, I'm not doing
Okay.
that. I'm not doing that. But
Okay.
we expect these students to come in perfect. And we have to recognize that they're in a growth pattern, and we have
Mm-hmm.
to coach them from where they are. Exactly. I'm sure you're a master of that with the work you do. You don't coach someone from where you expect them to be. You coach them from where they are and build them up accordingly. And so I see a big shift happening in dental schools right now, because of the challenges that we're putting our dental students through. And so I think I'm hoping it's a happier educational experience for our future colleagues. So.
Yeah, I'm reminded of a time that I teach a framework for how to have a difficult conversation. It's 3 steps. And I remember I was presenting this to a group of doctors once, and I said, okay, here's a formula you can use when you're going to have a difficult conversation. And one of the ladies raised her hand and said, "Kay, I have a real problem when you say formula, because to me, formulas, there's exactness and it must be this way every single time in order for it to work. And what you're describing sounds a little bit more flexible." And so, and it was eye opening for me about my clientele and the people that I coach, because, and just the way that I need to be careful with my languaging, but also be aware of how dentists are trained to think for a long time in a certain way. And so when it comes to things like trial and error, or building a practice and all of the things that come with entrepreneurship, or building a relationship and family life, which is completely unpredictable and very messy, right? These things aren't formulas. And so I now teach it as a framework or a recipe, where here is the general guideline, but please use everything that you can, your experience, your knowledge of that person and situation, and your own personality to bring your best to that situation.
Yeah, perfect. That's perfect because it has to be authentic when it's delivered from the person who has to face that challenging conversation. And
Mm-hmm.
if it's scripted, it doesn't. It seems like it's obvious then, and you may not generally get the connection you were hoping to, or the conversation that you would hope to have if it's very scripted. So we have guides and goals of every conversation that we have, and we got to use our own creativity and our own personality to deliver. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, while we're kind of on this topic of difficult conversations and life struggles, can you share with me a little bit about the conversations, maybe either the perspective of your wife going through this with you, or the conversations as you were working through your challenges? Because we all have our unique set of, chaos, loss, surprises, habits. And when we have a family that we're also invested in, at some point in that recovery process, or at some point in that transformation, some very open and vulnerable conversations have to be had. So, can you talk to me about that aspect of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's better to ask her, I guess, but I'll tell you,
Is
from
she
my
there?
perspective, from my perspective, it was a very scary time, and I had the support of my wife. I had the support of my family, my brothers, my sisters, my dad, my mom, and aunts and uncles, everybody, friends. I mean, it was really paramount that I had that. And when I decided to go to rehab, it was tough, and I had to, came clean with everyone. And my one of my best friends growing up, when I hit my bottom, I disappeared for a couple of days on a drug and alcohol binge, and he found me in a hotel in Chicago, and he said, "Brett, I'm coming to get you, and I'm going to bring you to my house. And by the way, your dad is searching the neighborhood. He's looking in dumpsters for you. We got people calling emergency rooms, and with your descriptions, and it was pretty scary." And he brought me to his house, and he goes, "Go in the back room and sleep it off. I'll take care of your family. We'll just tell them you were sick and here, blah blah blah." And something came over me that it was time, like a moment of clarity. It was time to stop doing this. I was in my third year of being a dentist, so in the third year of practice, and I knew things were out of control. And if I don't deal with this, I'm going to die. And it really scared me. So I came clean. And so, it wasn't fun having those conversations with my circle of support. But like I said, I had this moment of clarity where I felt like I had to. And because I did that, it made it easier for them to talk to me about this. And, so after I got sober, I remember my wife wanted to talk to me about something, and she was pretty had a concerned look on her face, and she's like, "Brett, we need to talk." And I was like, "Oh no, what did I do?" Because I was so fragile and stuff like that. And and she sits me down and she's like, Brett, I see your dad and I see how he's all hunched over like this, and I see you and your posture and you're all hunched over like this, and I'd hate to see this turn into that. And I was like, that's it? That's what you're going to say? That's you know,
Hmm.
but I was already going to catastrophe type of conversation and getting ready for
Hmm.
this difficult conversation to have, and that was her difficult conversation. And then, I remember another conversation. It was just, I remember another one. We met with another couple who the husband was in new recovery. He was a pharmacist, and we went to dinner. And the wife, wanted to talk to my wife about, what it was like. How was Brett at this time? And what's Brett like now? How did his recovery change him? And and it was really humbling. First of all, hearing my story through her eyes and through her perspective, because addiction is a very selfish disease, where I feel, I felt like it was just, I was justified in doing what I was doing because I worked hard, and that's how I like to unwind. And I didn't recognize the damage I was doing to those that were closest to me. um, and as I got more and more along the recovery journey, a lot of this came up, and I made amends for a lot of the things that I did, and just to clean my side of the street and build my foundation in recovery. And so she, the wife of this pharmacist asks her, what was Brett like then, and what's he like now? And in my mind, I've done this amazing growth explosion in my head of that Brett is so much better than he was while he was in his addiction in my mind. And and she basically told her, well, Brett's the same Brett, he just talks a little more, and but nothing's really changed. And I was like, what? Really? I can't really. So it was mostly an inside job. That my growth was inside, and
Hmm.
sometimes people recognize it, sometimes people don't.
Yep.
So but my friends, my family, my colleagues, my wife, my kids weren't born yet, but they all, they saw something in me that I didn't see in me, and they were
Hmm.
hurt in ways that I didn't recognize that I hurt them. And I got that opportunity to clean that up. And but yet they saw things in me, and therefore they supported me. And I never take that lightly. And so I'm pretty grateful for the grace that I was given to have these relationships. And and I, if addiction is a chronic, relapsing, fatal disease if left untreated, but it's manageable, like diabetes.
Hmm.
It's a
Right.
chronic, diabetes is a chronic disease, and it's manageable. And just like a diabetic can't can't live off the insulin he took 5 days ago, he or she has to take insulin today so they can have their best day today. And I have to do certain things for my recovery today so I can have my best day today. And I do that, first and foremost every morning. I wake up and I do some mindfulness exercises, and I ask myself some questions. What am I going to do for my recovery today? First and foremost, everything else is secondary, because without that, I've got nothing. And I'm very clear of
Hmm.
that. In the 24 years I've been on this path, that I've been sober, I've lost so many friends that I got sober with. They're dead. And I'm yes, I'm scared if I relapsed, I would lose my dentist, job to be a dentist, or opportunity to be a dentist, but I would lose so much more,
Hmm.
and I don't ever want to do that. So I take it pretty seriously. And as a result, I get to live a great life, and I really do get to contribute to the world. And, I wanted to practice at the highest level. And so I feel like I do that. And then to practice at the highest level, have that kind of practice, you have to be a leader. And I dove into becoming the best leader I could be, and just for my practice and my family. And then other people started recognizing that, and so they brought me in to help out with certain committees at the local level. And then they said, Brett, you're you would be a really good leader for the dental association. And so why don't you consider that? And then I became president of the Colorado Dental Association, and we did great things in my time in leadership. And, and that grew into, committees at the national level, the ADA, and then the ultimate. Right now, I serve at the board of trustees of the American Dental Association. What an honor for me to be able to contribute to the profession at the highest level. The ADA has the
Mhm.
biggest opportunity to influence the profession in the best way. To make it the best for our colleagues, and to practice the best in terms of of the communities we serve, so people get served. So when I was president of Colorado, I would treat a lot of other people in recovery, and I would do it as kind of a pro bono side project. And but when I was president of Colorado, I was part of the team that created a dental benefit in the Medicaid space here in Colorado. So 300,000 people now had an opportunity to have a dental home where they can access comprehensive dentistry, and not just emergency care. And so those were my people. Those are the people that I knew in recovery, and many more, obviously. And so I felt like, wow, I love practicing dentistry, and I love the relationships I have with my patients, and the positive impact I have when I get them out of pain, or create a smile, or build a bite, and their quality of life, their health improves, and all this stuff is happening. But then I found out that I can influence many people if I leverage it correctly. And so that was
Wow.
one aspect of that. And this all is on the foundation of Brett got sober and Brett wanted to live a better life. So,
Gosh, Brett, that is
it's
so
foundational.
beautiful. I love your
Thank you.
story. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you're so right. You know, when I think about high performers who either have gotten sober or would like to get sober, the only person I would be comfortable getting that type of advice and coaching from would be someone who is like me in a lot of ways, mindset wise, and who is like me in where I want to go. And so I need another high performer who struggled and then got sober. Um,
Right.
and so I think it's just such a beautiful thing that you've described there, because you're right. Yes, dentistry is so important, and we want to do dentistry and we want to improve the dental industry. And we want to help those dentists who want to get this help have someone who really understands them, where they've been and where they want to go. So thank you so much for what you're doing there. You talked about a couple of things that I want to touch on here. One of the things you said was that you had a really strong support system, people who were on your team and showed you a lot of love while you were going through that transition. But then you said you went to rehab and relapsed.
Uh huh.
So, could you talk to me a little bit? Because we've probably got a lot of listeners here who aren't the ones struggling with addiction. They're struggling to watch the person with addiction. So, when you think about the people that you found the most supportive for you throughout that whole process, whether you were thinking about getting sober, currently sober, relapsing, and trying again, what are some of the people that stand out to you that show the strongest support and that you just knew that person is my person, that person is there for me? What are those qualities and traits that demonstrated that level of support that you really needed?
The it was so my relapse story went on for about 14 months after rehab, and I kept it a secret again, and until I started suffering consequences, um, it was going to continue, because there was I couldn't stop. Basically, that's part of addiction, is you have no control over that. And the definition of addiction is continued use of a substance or a behavior that is damaging to your life in spite of potential consequences.
Mhm.
And that was a classic. I filled that definition with a classic role. And my absolute bottom was, I was living in Michigan. I moved to I went to Chicago to attend my best friend's mother's funeral. And I was in a relapse mode, and I could not stop myself. And I ended up showing up to the wake, and but then I disappeared and didn't make it to the funeral, and everyone knew. And so I kind of just kind of crawled back out of Chicago and went to Michigan. And at that point, my wife is like, okay, Brett, we're done with this. Figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, by the way, I made an appointment uh, with your uh, with your counselor at rehab, and for the three of us on Monday. And in the meantime, I'm leaving. And she left for the week and went back to her home to be with her family, and I was left to figure it out. Um, so she was bold, and I was afraid of losing that relationship, obviously, but I was more scared about, am I ever going to get over this? Again, I've never failed. This is my first time that I failed, and but I figured if I better, and I would go to recovery meetings, and and I went back to recovery meetings, and for whatever reason, there was a switch that flipped in me, where I started hearing the clear message of hope, and when I started feeling like, well, if this person up here who's speaking went through exactly what I went through, and they seem to be sober, they seem to be happy, and they seem to be living good lives, those are three things I couldn't figure out. I better listen to them. And so I kind of dove into that, and so I had to show a I guess an effort towards trying to get better. And as I did that, my wife came back, obviously, and my family supported me. My friend whose mother passed away, I quickly tried to make amends on that. And every year, so I call him, and my recovery anniversary, it was also the anniversary of his mom's passing. I call him and let him know, I've got another year. Again, I apologize. He won't. He says, "Stop apologizing. I don't want to hear that anymore." So, but he, I was with him. I don't know, in February in Chicago when I was back there, and we all went to dinner, and me and my friends group, and and it's and they just never wavered. They might have not have been so happy in the moment about the things, the stuff that the stunts I was pulling, but they never wavered. They may have been mad in the moment, but they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and they never gave up on me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and and I tried not to take advantage of that, because I know there's many stories that don't end up like mine, where the person, the addict, continues relapsing, continues causing harm, and and I wouldn't have put up with my behaviors for 5 minutes, and I would now, but at the time, low emotional intelligence and very reactionary, I wouldn't have done that. So I don't know. I don't know if there's a great answer, but I was pretty blessed with with the love of my circle that never wavered, and I so I moved 1,500 miles away from all my friends and family, because
Mm-hmm.
first of all, I wanted to be in Denver, I wanted to be in the mountains, and maximize my life in the wilderness and stuff, and have a good dental career and that stuff. But even though I moved so far away from everyone, I made an active effort to not be separate from them. And I have, great relationships with my siblings, my parents, my friends, and I talk to them I talk to them often, and
Mm-hmm.
so I probably nurture the relationships I have much more than they do, because I feel like I owe them so much, and don't ever want to lose that, and want to just show gratitude and appreciation for the fact that they never turned their back on me.
Yeah, that's so wonderful, and it's such a blessing to have people like that in your life, So for clarity, those listening, whether you're struggling with addiction or a support to someone who is struggling with addiction, there are going to be hard conversations. There may be relapse involved, but I think one of the important things to remember is that once that sobriety is in place, while it may not be comfortable, at least that person is present every step of the way to either, say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, and then fix it, or they're present to hear how you feel about it. But the point is their presence. That's what we want. And then from there, it's a journey to work forward from there. You also talked about something, though. You said somebody had asked, what is Brett like now that he's sober? And they said, oh, pretty much the same. And I think it's really important because we can't be searching for that external validation that we're on the right path. I think that we need to define for ourselves what success looks like. Whatever our overage is that we're trying to get in check or completely eliminate, we need to define for ourselves what success is and then be our own source of validation, because there are going to be people that it takes a really long time for them to, some people are going to be like your friend where they're like, hey, stop apologizing. And other people are going to want to talk about it for many, many years after you've made that apology or made that amends. And I think it's just got to be, I think the healthy approach is to have a predefined way of looking at when you're going to let yourself feel okay about things. So how do you today define success for your life?
That's a great question. I was having that with a friend that I am mentoring. This exact question: what is success? And some people can define it by the numbers in their bank account. Some people define it by the number of new patients they have this month. Uh, for me, it is it really is about am I contributing every day to the world in a positive way? And and whether it's personal, inside kind of thing, whether it's with my family and my kids, whether it's with personal an impact with my patients in a positive way, a committee I'm serving on, a group I'm leading. I want to be moving forward, and so that's where my definition of success comes. And with that, happiness is fleeting, right? I can be happy, I could be sad, but I can still be successful. And and so your emotions still pop into my brain, and it's like a sine wave. It's up and down, and that's life. But but I, I can decide how I want to act based on those emotions. Like I don't have to sit in it if it's bad, and I don't have
Right.
to coast on it when it's good. So actions. I have tools today that I didn't have 25 years ago, and alcohol and drugs were my solution to everything in life. If I felt depressed, I would drink. If I felt and I would instantly feel better. If I felt happy, I would drink, because then I would instantly feel even happier.
Right.
And so it was, I had to learn how to live and how to negotiate life without a substance to, help uh, manage those emotions that came into my head. And so, success first and foremost is sober, that, and I've been able to do that for, 24 and a half years, and, at one day at a time. Every day I do the same thing, and, versions of that, but pretty much the same thing. And from there, I want to be able to contribute to the world. And I want to go back real quick to, your support group and support system. And, and I go to 12-step programs, and one of the 12-step programs I go to is Al-Anon. And Al-Anon is a program that, is a support group with an action plan for people who have alcoholics and addicts in their lives. And one of the things I learned in that group is that I will support people in my life, but and if they are on a good path. I'm like, I would tell people, I will not support you in your disease. I will not, co-sign it when I think you're on a bad path. I will be honest with you, but it's going to come from a place of love and care. It's not going to come from a place of judgment. And so, if you have someone in your life that is going down a scary road, and the best thing you can say to that person is, I am concerned. I'm concerned you're going down a bad path. I'm concerned you're going to have devastating consequences as a result of the path you're on. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to see you lose this, X, Y, Z. And I'm here to support you in your recovery in any way I can, but I will not support you in your disease. And so this
Yes.
applies not only in with people with substance abuse, but mental illness is so prevalent, and and you don't have to have a substance abuse problem to have mental illness. And And so people are suffering in silence, and we who are supporters of these people don't really know how to help. And you can't help, you can't fix it for them, because it is an inside job, just like with substance abuse. All you can do is support. And when someone is struggling and they're telling me all these things that are happening, it's a guy thing, I guess. I don't want to generalize, but we like to fix things. And we're fixers. And I think that's never been effective. I can give people, oh, it's really logical, just do this and this, and you'll be great. But the bottom line is, that they have to find their way. And so I say things like, well, that sounds like a lot of heavy stuff. You sound like you're in a
Hmm.
lot of pain. What can I do to support you? And sometimes it's just listening. Most of the time it's just listening, so they can hear themselves identify and examine the emotions that they're in, and how can I support them? They give me parameters of how I can support, and I try to support them along those
Hmm.
ways, and not fix it.
Yes.
It's almost like a level of insanity. Addiction is insanity.
Mm.
Okay, and because no logical person would continue doing what they're doing. And if there was a logical fix, um, like, Brett, don't you see you're doing so much drugs, you're going to die? Don't you see you're going to lose your license? You're going to hurt someone. You're going to drive, all
Right.
these things that people are telling me. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, whatever. My proverbial middle finger goes up. What do you know?
Uh-huh.
I hate to
Uh-huh.
say that, but it's true that, and that's logic. Logic doesn't fix the disease.
Hmm.
Okay, it has to have this spark, and there are, and treatment was really key. Even though I didn't get 100% better when I was in treatment. I learned a lot about myself, but I thought I was in such denial. I thought I could control it with logic. And that's when I felt at my most bottom, when logic failed me, because it had never
Uh-huh.
failed me before. And
Hmm.
so, but I had people around me, what can I do to support you? That's really what it was.
Yeah. I like that you talked about mental illness and you you talked about boundaries and you didn't call it that. I'm calling it that. But here's what I've noticed: a lot of high performers and a lot of dentists that I work with like to avoid conflict. And when we're dealing with someone who has a set of behaviors or mental illness or an addiction, whatever the thing is that we don't want to support and nurture, like you were talking about, um, sometimes the thought is if I just don't address it or I ignore that exists, then I'm not supporting it. But what you're describing is something a little more proactive and a little more direct. Like, hey, when you're having your anger outbursts, I'm not going to be around for that. I'm going to love and support you and I'll ask how to do that, but I'm not going to be a casualty of that. And I'm not going to be stand by and watch you do that or whatever the thing is. If you're struggling with your sexual addiction, I'm not going to take you there or encourage that behavior with you, but I will raise my hand and ask you how I can love and support you on your journey to health and wellness. And that can be a scary thing, but you're right, that is the more emotionally responsible thing, because you're taking your own emotions out of the equation and just saying, how do I want to best impact and support this person's path to recovery? And I love you bringing that up.
Yeah, and I know you are an expert on emotional intelligence and growing your emotional intelligence and the power of growing your emotional intelligence, because that's really what it is. The first half of emotional intelligence is identifying, what am I feeling right now in the moment, and is it serving me? And then the other half of the emotional intelligence equation is, what is the person that I'm in a relationship with feeling in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and am I locking in with those mirror neurons, and getting caught up in their
Right.
emotions, and in their
Yes.
drama, or can I step away from that, and not get that limbic lock per se, and be a true resource for that person, and
Mm-hmm.
set boundaries, and be able to detach, the parts of that person that I know are harmful, but still love them, unconditionally, but not get sucked into those arguments. And one example of that, my mom and I, she passed in 2018. But she was I love her, absolutely love her, but she was a tough person to deal with, and she suffered greatly from mental illness, depression, bipolar, and and when I, was part of on my recovery journey, I made amends to her, and the last 6 years of her life, we had a great relationship, and I grew, she didn't, and there were many, many times where she tried to throw spears to
Yep.
get me riled up in certain ways, and I was able to see those spears for what they were, sidestep them, change the conversation, not go there, and still be able to have an amazing display of love for her. And when she passed, I mean, there were years where we didn't talk, years, and it was so painful for me. It was so painful for her. And but when she passed, my brothers and sister and I were all by her bedside, and honestly, it was a beautiful moment because nothing was left unsaid. We all knew that all she ever wanted was for us to be together, her kids to be together in support of each other. And we were there, and that's what happened. And that would have never happened had I not done this kind of work. I just did it to get sober, but then I was like, that I do it now to live my best life. And this is an example of that. And, growing emotional intelligence goes hand in hand with growing your recovery, and not just from substance abuse, but from mental illness, and anyone who's a high achiever. The more we can grow that, the more effective we're going to be in everything we want to do and every goal that we want to achieve.
Well, that's why I think it's so important to really define success. And our language is just so powerful. And, in order to disrupt those thought, feeling, action patterns that we're operating from, we have to know what the heck we're thinking. And I find that sometimes we really freak ourselves out. Like if we've attributed that some person or some situation causes stress for us, we have so many experiences that have defined the word stress that when we think it, our body goes into stress mode. It starts reacting before we're even in that situation. You talked about catastrophizing earlier. That's what we do. We start in advance having these emotional and physical responses to situations that sometimes aren't even real yet. But even if they are, the only way to change and pivot to a pattern of predictable, healthy behavior is to understand and really get down to the granular details of what we're thinking and why we're thinking that. And by the way, a lot of times there are a lot of reasonable reasons why we've developed these thought processes. They're just not serving us anymore, like you suggested earlier. And so we've got to have that support to change.
Exactly. And picking up on the physical cues that your body
Yes.
experiences when the stress happens, and then you can actually notice your physiology changing, can avert so much stress and chaos and that would happen if we left, we stayed on that path. And managing that physiology is so key, but we're so unaware of it unless we do this work intentionally. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm going to just put a plug for you, that I've always had a coach. No, we don't work together, you and I personally, but you would be someone I would work with. I've had a coach, a mentor, guide, um, my entire career after I got sober. Every single aspect of my life, I want help with, because I am blind to so many aspects of my life that are holding me back. And so I did it intentionally. When I started my practice in 2003, I brought in a business coach to help me and help me stay accountable to, first of all, help me tease out what my vision is, and then help me stay accountable to that vision. Over the years, I've had different coaches and consultants help us, grow that. I've had personal coaches, athletic coaches. When I did I used to be a coach, an Ironman coach, for people. And then I hired an Ironman coach when it was time for me to do my
Mm-hmm.
Ironman in Hawaii. And if the best athletes, Olympic athletes, pro athletes, they have coaches, why can't I have a coach? Why wouldn't I have a coach? If the highest achievers have coaches, why can't I
Hmm.
do that? And and I think that the people you work with would probably say the same thing. And a lot of people, a lot of my colleagues, I would tell them, get a coach, and they say, well, I can't afford it. I'm like, you can't afford not to. If you want to achieve what you want to achieve, how, this is an investment, you know, in yourself. And the return on the
Absolutely.
investment is so much greater than what I could do on my own.
It's your life. It's the pathway to the life that you want to achieve, and it's learning to love every step of that process. And I couldn't, first of all, thank you. I couldn't agree with you more. One of my rules is I tell people, first of all, to research the type of coach and have interviews with that person, make sure they're a good fit. But I would never ever hire a coach that wasn't also actively engaged with a coach, because I want to only grow from people who are further than me and continuing to grow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one
So,
of my things in my life is, I always go to the smartest person in the room, the most inspiring person in
yes.
the room, and how did you do it? What kind of things, what obstacles did you face? How did you overcome them? What were your fears? And
Yes.
a lot of times I'll do that proactively, but a lot of times people came and did that to me because they saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. And
Hey, Brett, what happened there?
I don't know. All of a sudden, you were gone.
I all of a sudden you were gone. I'm so sorry.
Shoot, that was a great track we were on too.
It
Um,
was, and I think this program is having some issues today. I'm so sorry. I have to apologize for that. I've never had this happen.
yeah, my maybe the
Well,
internet was glitchy, but
I,
I have a stream going of ESPN right here, so it wasn't that on my end,
yeah.
but whatever, it is what it is. I
Well,
love what we're
it
talking
looks like
about,
it's
by the
still recording.
way.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay,
Keep
good.
going.
No, but I was just saying I was blessed enough that people saw things in me, personally and professionally, and had the courage to tell me, right, maybe you should look, go in this path and see how this works for you. I think you would be amazing there. It's just like my friend told me in dental school to try dental school.
Mhm.
With your engineering background, you would do really well. And the girls were cute. That's what my hook in. But I did really well. But people like that, I say, I have a saying for that now, that I'm on this path, and angels always appear on that path, and angels always come with a message. And so I look for those messages. I look for those signs from the universe, because I believe that that the universe wants us to succeed and be happy and share with the world. And so I'm always on the lookout for that. And but people just enter my life in some level of synchronicity, and I latch onto it, and I'm better for it, and as are they. And some specific mentors that I've had, I always ask, how can I repay you? And they're like, pay it forward, Brett, pay it forward. And that's what I
Mhm.
try and do. And so when I see people that have this great potential, I will be that person to hopefully be that catalyst that will help them get on a bigger path, play a bigger game, and achieve greater things, because people were there for me to do that. I want to be that person for the next group, the next generation.
Yes, I love that.
So,
Will you say your phrase again? Something about angels.
I'm walking this path in life, and angels always seem to appear on that path, and angels always come with a message, and they're here to tell me something, and danger ahead, or try this, or move this way, and I've never been steered wrong. And so,
Absolutely.
and I keep a lookout for those angels, and but I have to be in a good mindset on a
Hmm.
regular basis to be open to those messages, and to see those messages. A lot of times the messages are there, but we're completely blind to it because our head is down, and we're so focused on a certain number success, or a certain goal, and what I've learned is that I appreciate the journey as much as achieving the goal. And when I am going after big goals, and I learned this when I did the Ironman. I'll talk about the Ironman again. Is I had to become someone different to get to that finish line, and
Right.
uh, and so and I had to be conscious about that. I had to be teachable. I had to be open. I had to be okay with failures, and bad days are going to happen, and so if you're going to go after big goals, the person you are now would have already achieved it if you were if it was if it was you had all the tools. If you're going to achieve big goals, you
Right.
have to be open to gathering more tools to get to that finish line. And so I love the journey as much as I love to getting the goal achieved.
I love that you said that, and mine is that everything is rigged in my favor. And I think it's so important to come up with some sort of
Love that.
life mantra, something that you say to yourself, but it's got to be genuine. You got to really believe it. Like, I really believe that if I go out there and I drive to the store and I get 4 flat tires, there is a reason that is rigged in my favor. It doesn't have
Right.
to seem like it. That's just what my eyes see. That's really irrelevant, because when you start talking about, energy and um, vibrations of the universe or angels or God, whatever your spiritual beliefs are, um, it's so much more than what you see right in front of you. And I like that you touched on needing to be in a place where you can receive those messages or in tune with the angel giving you the direction, because I think we're inundated with social media and, things on TV and advertisements that are loud and bold and, all of these things that are just coming at us in a really loud and aggressive fashion. And that's not the way, at least in my experience, that those intuitive messages um, come to us. It's a much more delicate and a much more serene type of message that you have to be in the right frame of mind to even recognize are right in front of you.
Yeah, and I look at it as an ego thing too, and my ego has positives and it has negatives,
Yeah.
and but then there's the ego on one side of me, and then my spirit on the other side of me. And I'm not talking about religion whatsoever. I'm Jewish, but that I'm not very observant. Sorry to my forefathers, but but I have a deep sense of spirituality that
Uh-huh.
there is good in the universe, and I want to participate in
Yeah.
that good. And with my ego, kind of lives in this scarcity mode, and you need more. Don't do that. Don't go after that. You're comfortable here, and but yet give me all the accolades when I get there, and and that's
Yes.
it's all it drives the external validation to an extreme almost, and and ego made me who I am, absolutely. But if I can put that aside and shut off the noise that comes with it, I hear the true messages of of my purpose. I can act accordingly, and that's really what it is for me, is just trying to be more in tune with that, and suppress the negative parts of the ego. So
Mm-hmm.
we can go
Mm-hmm.
forever on that if you want, but
Yeah, I
maybe
was just
another
thinking about that.
episode.
I'm like, well, thank you so much for bringing up ego, because that is really important topic and definitely opens up a can of worms for sure. But but yeah,
Yeah.
it's all comes back to that self-awareness, and before that you have to have a level of willingness, and I also want to say courage, because
Mm,
whenever you talk about you're so right. I love that you said if you were currently equipped to do the great and big things that you aspire to do, then you would have done them. And so that suggests that there's some level of personal growth that has to happen before you're qualified to participate in those events. Um, and in order to do that development, you have to be willing to have an objective view of yourself as you currently are, and potentially coaches and mentors along the way that can help you have that viewpoint. And you have to have courage, because it's not always going to be what you want to see, but it's going to be what you need to see so that you can identify how to improve.
yeah. What you're describing, I define that as humility. Absolutely. Where we have a very solid understanding of where you're at, with a firm resolve to be the best you can be, no matter what the circumstances are. You've accepted that, and now you're willing to do whatever it takes to move to the next level. And humility has, so humbleness is a positive attribute. Humility is a positive word describing us. But on the same coin, humiliation is what occurs when
Mm.
we fail. And, it's got the same word roots, but we can't, and a lot of times ego would prevent us from moving forward because we don't want to be humiliated. We don't want to look bad. We don't want that shame.
Mm.
And, but sometimes, failing is part of growth. What do you learn when things don't go right? And we think we know it best, and sometimes it's not the right way, and we'll suffer. We may suffer consequences as a result of that path, but we have to be open, and the courage to move forward. And courage doesn't mean absence of fear. If you
Right.
describe people who are soldiers and that fight for the U.S., when they're in that front line, they're known as courageous people, but I can guarantee you they're not without fear when they are in the act of battle. I promise you they're in fear. No one wants to die. No one wants to fail and fail their cohort. There's a lot of fear there, but their
Right.
faith of walking through that fear for a better desired outcome is what drives them through that, and that's where the courage is. And so it
Hmm.
doesn't always feel good in the moment, but if we can be courageous with our actions, we have to be if we want to grow. And if you look at Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey's book, we talked about core values. And, one of the most important core values we have to have is courage. Because we can say we have a core value of honesty. Okay. But if we don't have the courage to act honest, it's just a word.
Right.
Right. And so
Right.
courage is a mindset that it may not feel good, but we, got to have the faith enough to go through that fear with a preferred, a better desired outcome than we're at without acting.
And I like that you said faith because I think that is what's compelling enough to sustain the motivation to get through the courageous, which we just said doesn't feel good, the courageous action is the faith that you're doing it for a reason that's not just maybe possible, but you're determined to get there and you have faith that you will. And these are the steps that you need to take. I think that's what allows that motivation to grow and sustain as you're doing those things. The movies, they make courageous people look like they're almost enjoying, but for sure it's not affecting them on an emotional level. And the only thing I can conclude is that those people have a vision in their mind of what that achievement is going to look like, or what that rescue is going to be like, or what that success is going to feel like. They have something that is driving them that is so much stronger than any of the doubts or fears or worries along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, and the tied to the cause, and they're all in uh, to make that cause happen. And we talk about faith, and again, there's religious connotations with that word. And I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about
Yeah.
faith, that the cause, that you are faithful to that cause, that cause will create a better preferred future. And only way to connect the dots is courageously act along those lines.
Absolutely. Another way to look at it is there's not faith and doubt. There's only ever faith. It's just if you have faith in the thing you want, or inverted faith in the thing that you don't. And I really
Mhm.
like that
Right.
way of looking at it.
Right.
Because then it's just choose your faith. Do you have faith that's going to work out or not? That's up to you.
Right. Right.
Well, Brett, this has been so much fun. What have I not asked you that you want to make sure we get to talk about today?
Now that I'm just reflecting back on, that I've got, in the midst of creating some really big goals in my life, and and as I talk about it, I'm recognizing all these people that are in my life helping me achieve these goals, and and I'm so grateful for that. And I'm, you and I have only talked once, and but I feel like we're very much on the same page, and I appreciate you, reaching out to me, and taking a chance to get to know me a little better in this forum. And I hope that anyone who made it this far in this episode, that you heard something that you needed to hear, and heard something that may give you the courage to act along the lines of you living your best life and you and your definition of success. We are all going to experience obstacles along the way, and the resilience that we build by us going through those obstacles and and breaking through those challenges is what is what the drives the success and gives me a lot of joy. And I wish that for everyone that I encounter. So I guess that would be the last thing I would say.
Well, thank you so much. Your story is just filled with so much beauty and so much triumph and so much courage. And I really appreciate you coming on today. And I'm so glad we're connected as well. I feel the same way. I was so excited for this interview. And now I'm so excited to talk to you the next time I talk to you. And more than anything, just sincerely appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.